Looks like everybody's miserable today.
I have had a chronic cough, and they are doing construction, never-ending construction in my main courthouse. I'm at a Wichita, and so I went to the doctor not too long ago. Was hoping he would tell me I had COVID or was contagious and could take a day off, but he's like, "No, you're fine. It's just the construction. I'm allergic to the construction."
And you can't get away from it.
And I am right dead center in the middle of it.
Oh.
So,
And what she's not telling you is there's a sign on the 3rd floor about an asbestos warning.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
That's what I was thinking.
She has taken a picture and forwarded it to her family so that if anything happens, they can sue everybody, right? I always get a kick out of these warnings. It's like, warnings, do you really think that that takes away your liability, that you're warning me that where I'm working has asbestos?
Right.
Or that you're warning me that, you know, if I lock the door, which I have to, bad things can happen. I'm like, whatever. The judge knows I had a long day yesterday. I had 13 hearings in Eastland, and Eastland is a 2.5+ hour drive. So, but since you're in Breckenridge, you know, there's that time warp when you're driving between Graham and Breckenridge.
Yeah.
It should always take you about 30 minutes, and it always takes you about 45.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, there's a time warp between Breckenridge and Eastland.
Yeah,
That's very true.
it just centers around Breckenridge, I think.
Well, they have to have that since they don't have cell service.
Right. Hi, Rye.
Jordan, is your client going to be here for the whole hearing?
I told her that she's welcome to stay for the whole hearing, but if at any point she gets overwhelmed and wishes to leave, that she can hang up.
I just have to put people's names down.
the court will note that the child and her placement is present, and if the court can have announcements.
Ursula Rush and Alyssa Wood for the department ready.
Jordan Barron, attorney ad litem for the child, present. I'm ready.
Rebecca Navarro Casa.
Also present is guardian Heather Brockhurst. She is present as well. All parties have agreed to waive the requirement of a court reporter and continue with just audio recording of this hearing. Is that correct, Ms. Rush?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Barron?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Brockhurst?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Rush, if you can notify or update the court on notice to the other conservator, Brad
Yes,
Gottschall.
Mr. Gottschall and Ms. Bronkhurst are joint managing conservators with the department. I forwarded it to them at the same time with including your court coordinator, the Zoom link. Obviously, it went through okay because Ms. Bronkhurst is here. So Mr. Gottschall has gotten notice. I have not heard from him.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms. Rush.
Department calls Heather, and we've discussed the problems I have with your last name because of the speech impediment I have, and you're okay with me calling you Heather, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So Heather, you and I and Ms. Barron met outside of this full room in a breakout room to discuss what the department wanted to ask for today. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And what the department is asking for is that you be removed as joint managing conservator. Mr. Gottschall be removed as joint managing conservator, and the department be named permanent managing conservator. Is that what I explained to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And I understand you are in agreement with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we also discussed that just because you're not going to be a managing conservator and will no longer be a party to this case does not mean that if Riley wants you on her visitor list or her phone call list, that and you're okay with that, y'all can still communicate that way, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And if she and the therapist believe that the equivalent of family therapy between you and Riley with a therapist would be in Riley's best interest, and you agree you can still do that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, if something happens later on and you want to try to have Riley placed in your home, that is also a possibility, because you would be considered what's called fictive kin, which means you have a non-blood relationship with her, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And all of that requires both of you to agree, but it doesn't close the door. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it also a fair thing to say that you love Riley and you just want what's best for her?
Yes, very much so.
And I also explained to you that if your joint managing conservatorship is removed, that does open up the possibility of Riley being adopted. And you thought that was good, and that might be in her best interest as well.
Yes, ma'am.
But being taken out of the case, you no longer will be given notice of hearings, notice of how she's doing in her therapy, that sort of thing. Anything you find out from Riley will have to come voluntarily from Riley. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're in agreement. Is there anything you want to say before I pass you?
No, ma'am.
And I'm sorry, I should have asked you just for clarification, because when you're doing a final, it's like you have to go over everything that we've said for the last year. But Riley was actually living with you, not with Mr. Gottschall. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how often did Mr. Gottschall see Riley while Riley was living with you?
Every other weekend.
Okay. Have you had much contact with Mr. Gottschall since the department took custody?
Just basic things, basic communication about the other children and visitation.
Because, and please correct me if I am wrong, you are actually raising his biological children.
Yes, ma'am.
They're not your biological children, right?
No, ma'am.
Did he let you know anything about today's hearing?
No.
Okay, pass the witness.
Ms. Barron,
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Bronkhorst, after the decision was made to be removed as a managing conservator of Riley, were you given the opportunity to meet with her and discuss that decision?
Yes.
And do you feel like that was a good thing for you and Riley to have that conversation?
Yes, ma'am. It was good.
Do you feel like you and Riley walked away from that on good terms and with an understanding of each other's positions?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you believe that there is a possibility that you may be able to continue some contact with her in the future if that's what everybody wants?
Absolutely.
I'll pass the witness.
thank you. Anything further, Ms. Rush?
From this witness, no, ma'am.
Thank you. You may call your next witness, Ms. Rush.
Department calls Alyssa Wood.
I'm a permanency case manager with 2 Engage.
And you've heard Heather testify. Do you agree with her that it's in the best interest of Riley that she be removed as managing conservator, joint managing conservator, and the department be named permanent managing conservator, just so?
Yes,
And you understand the same questions I asked Heather about there still being contact, if it's okay with Riley, Heather, and Riley's therapist, as long as she's in an RTC.
yes,
Do you think that's also in the best interest of Riley?
yes,
And is it your understanding that Mr. Gottschall has appeared at one and only one hearing since this case has been going on?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
yes.
You got to speak up a little bit. I've got mine at 100%, but you're soft-spoken.
Okay.
And is it your understanding that with the exception of that hearing, at every hearing before this one, which was a Zoom, the court has given him an option of appearing by phone, but he's not even appeared by phone?
Yes,
How many times has he called you regarding this case?
none.
Do you believe that if you had to compare relationships, that Riley seems closer
Hold
to
on.
him?
Hold on one moment. It appears that Mr. Gottschall is joining. I'm going to have the record reflect that Mr. Gottschall has joined the Zoom meeting at 9:48 a.m. You may continue, Ms. Rush.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to stop my examination of Ms. Wood and call Mr. Gottschall. Or, Your Honor, could we have a breakout room real quick?
Certainly.
Mr. Gottschall, is that a picture or is that you?
It's a picture. I've got to turn my video on.
Your Honor, could Ms. Barron and Mr. Gottschall and I go into a room very shortly?
Certainly.
Your Honor, I believe we have an agreement, if I could call him, interrupt Ms. Wood's testimony.
Any objection, Ms. Barron?
No
Mr.
objection.
Gottschall, were you going someplace to sit down?
I'm going into the shop so that I can hear everything and you can hear me.
Okay. Are you almost there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. State your name, please.
My name is Bradford Allen Gottschall.
And you are joint managing conservator of Riley, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in a breakout room, Ms. Barron and I discussed with you what the department's asking for today, which is to be named sole permanent managing conservator and to dismiss you as well as Heather as joint managing conservators.
Yes, ma'am.
And you missed the first part of the hearing, but Heather's already testified that she agrees to that. Are you also agreeing to that?
Yes, ma'am.
And we discussed, and do you understand that you can still have contact with Riley as long as you, Riley, and while Riley is in the RTC, her RTC agrees you can remain on the visit list or the mail list or the phone call list, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And we also discussed the possibility of Riley being adopted if both of the other joint managing conservators are removed, and you understand that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And you do love Riley and you think this is what's best for her.
Yes, I do.
Can I ask you what town you're in today?
I'm in Breckenridge.
Okay, pass the witness.
Ms. Brockhurst, do you have any questions for Mr. Gottschall? And the record to reflect that she nodded her head in the negative. Ms. Barron, any questions?
No, I have no questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Rush, would you like to proceed with continue your examination of Ms. Wood at this time?
Please.
Thank you. You may continue.
Okay, Alyssa, you just heard Mr. Gottschall say that he believes it's in the best interest of Riley for his joint managing conservatorship to be ended. Do you agree with him?
Yes.
And once again, as we talked about with Heather, do you agree that as long as Riley, Mr. Gottschall, and the RTC, as long as she's in the RTC, believe that it's okay for her to have some type of contact or counseling or whatever with him, that is still a possibility?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that all biological parents' rights to Riley have been terminated in a private action years ago, which is how Heather and Mr. Gottschall got named conservators?
Yes.
You have not gotten a hard release date for Riley, have you?
I have not.
So how's she doing?
She's doing really well. I've gotten great updates on her. And last time we spoke at the school, she was doing pretty well.
She passing her classes, and do I need to ask that Riley close her ears when I ask you this?
No, she's a great student. She is passing her classes.
At some point, she's going to be released from the RTC. Do you have any reason to believe you cannot find a loving, caring family to take care of Riley?
That will not be an issue.
Pass the witness.
Ms. Brockhurst, do you have any questions for Ms. Wood?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Gottschall, do you have any questions for Ms. Wood?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Barron?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Wood since it became known that this was the plan of Ms. Bronkhorst, Mr. Gottschall, and the department, has Riley had the opportunity to discuss this arrangement in a counseling setting?
Yes.
And is this something that you believe they have been addressing and given her the opportunity to process for quite a while now?
Yes.
Do you believe that she understands what this means?
I do.
And do you believe that she is working on coming to terms with what it means?
Yes.
Was she also given the opportunity to speak directly with Ms. Bronkhorst and Mr. Gottschall regarding what their future looks like?
I know that she was able to speak to Heather. I'm not sure that she was able to speak to Brad.
Have you advised her that if she has any questions, confusion, or just wants to talk some things through, that she can call yourself, me, or her CASA, Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
And in those conversations with her, does she seem at peace with what's happening?
She seems like she's dealing with it. I wouldn't say at peace, but she is dealing with it.
Do you also believe that it's in her best interest that this is the arrangement going forward?
Yes.
I'll pass witness.
Thank you. Any other witnesses, Ms. Rush?
No, no, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Bronkhorst, do you have any witnesses you'd like me to consider at this time?
No, ma'am.
Is there anything you would like to tell me that's not already been addressed at some point in time during this hearing?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you. Mr. Gottschall, do you have any witnesses at this time?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Is there anything you would like to tell me about this case or this situation, or Ms. Riley, that has not been discussed at this time?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Barron, any witnesses?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Does everybody rest and close?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Ms. Riley and Ms. Taylor?
Yes, Your Honor.
I was going to ask Ms. Riley if there's anything she would like me to know. And you're shaking your head no? Let me ask you a few questions. So I hear you're a good student. Is that true?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is your favorite subject? Math? Oh my goodness.
Your Honor, at this time, we may want to change our position.
What is your worst or least favorite subject? I'm sorry?
Social studies.
Ah,
That was
I'm
my
com-
degree.
I'm completely opposite. I can't do math over third grade. That's why I went to law school. And how are you doing? Are you driving back to Audrey Grace?
We are not now because we were losing service while driving, so we stopped at a spot to continue the service.
And have y'all been getting a lot of rain? And
Yeah.
yeah, we
hail.
have to. Is there anything that you need, Miss Riley?
No, just visits with my family.
I understand. Anything you would like to add, Miss Taylor, that's not been discussed?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for driving over. I apologize that it was for naught.
No, it's all right, Your Honor. I don't know that we were sent out the link last night or whenever that was sent out. And honestly, it gives us an excuse to kind of walk around this beautiful lake right now to kind of take a break after the hearing.
Well, I'm glad it worked out. At this time, then the court is going to make the following finding. The court is going to find that under chapter 156, 101 of the Family Code, the court does find that the modification of the previous order is appropriate, and that the circumstances of a conservator, child, or other party by the original order have materially and substantially changed. So therefore, the court will dismiss the managing conservator of Heather Bronkhurst and Bradford Gottschall to the child Riley. That will be immediate. In addition, the court does find that all of the prerequisites for a non-parent conservator contained in Chapter 153 have been met, and therefore the Department of Family and Protective Services will be named permanent managing conservator of the child Riley. The court does approve the continued contact between Riley and her family, and that will be solely upon the agreement of Miss Riley, Miss Heather, and Mr. Brad. In addition, the court is going to continue the placement of Riley and Miss Wood as the medical and education consenter, continue the current meds, continue the child service plan. The court does find that the current placement is meeting all of the specific needs for Miss Riley at this time. The court is going to continue the attorney ad litem, Ms. Barron, in this matter until such time that this case is dismissed. The court will continue CASA as the guardian ad litem for Ms. Riley until this case is dismissed. The court does find that this placement is the least restrictive placement for Ms. Riley at this time, and the department has made reasonable efforts to achieve the permanency goal. The court does approve the current medication regime that Ms. Riley is on. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed at this time, Ms. Rush?
No, ma'am. We'll be getting you in order.
Anything from you, Ms. Bronkhurst, that I need? Any questions? If I can't answer them for some reason, sometimes there are legal reasons. I will certainly refer you to someone that can.
No, ma'am.
And I would like to say thank you very much, Ms. Bronkhurst. You have been at each and every hearing, and I certainly appreciate and applaud your support of Ms. Riley and your continued support of Ms. Riley. So thank you very much. I certainly appreciate you maintaining that bond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gottschall, any questions that you have for the court?
No, ma'am.
And I would also like to say, sir, thank you for your continued involvement with Ms. Riley. Thank you. Ms. Barron, anything I need to clarify at this time?
No, Your Honor.
And Ms. Navarro, anything you would like to add?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Then safe travels to you, Ms. Riley, and good luck mathing in the future. And we will go off the record. Have a safe trip back. And thank you, everyone, for your interest in Ms. Riley. It's apparent from everything I have seen and everything that I have read, she is a unique and remarkable young lady. And so thank you very much. We will go off.